As I think back on my many years in the commercial real estate arena, there have been many changes. I think in some ways, maybe the most significant change, though, occurred in the late 1980s. If you know my story, you know that I started with CBRE in 1982. And in those days, CBRE was a classic B2B sales organization. Many of the CBRE people around me had come from Xerox, IBM, Burroughs, Hewlett-Packard, National Cash Register, and so we were really modeled on a classic sales organization where there was formal training, there was a sales manager who kept track of the salespeople. It was that person's job to accelerate the salespeople, cause them to be more powerful in the roles that they were in. And that's how it was when I joined CBRE in 1982. But by the end of the 1980s, the RTC crisis had set in. Now, what the RTC crisis means, for those who weren't there, is that the savings and loan industry was granted the right to make commercial real estate loans according to a law in 1980. By 1988, that was a complete debacle. The savings and loan industry had made so many loans that went into default that the government formed a company called the Resolution Trust Company, took all those loans back, and the impact that that had on the commercial real estate arena was that for about 3 years, there were essentially no transactions. We were actually calling the RTC and say, hey, we have somebody who wants to buy this property. And they said, hey, great, but we can't find the deed, or the deed is in a box in Kansas. And so as a result, there was really a freezing of commercial real estate activity for about 2 years. And with that, the brokerage companies madly cut overhead. In order to survive, they cut away overhead. And really the first ones to go were those non-producing sales managers. So as a result, what happened was the salespeople were essentially on their own. And when the RTC crisis ended, the commercial real estate firms who had cut away a lot of overhead were not eager to add it back. So they sort of compromised by raising the split to the salespeople and saying, gosh, instead of 50-50 split, it's now going to be 70-30 in your favor, which sounded like a good thing, but what it really meant is that there was a much smaller value proposition from the firms themselves, from the agencies. And so that really set us on a course of creating almost an every man for yourself type of environment, which was really different than the pure corporate sales environment that we had come from before. We went from all of the salespeople being employees to all of the salespeople becoming independent contractors, which is where we are today. Now, in some ways, that's what pulled me into the role that I'm in now, because salespeople get a greater split to themselves, but they have to self-supply coaching. They have to self-supply that sales manager concept. And that's really what has happened to me over the last 3 decades, which is I wasn't in need of a sales manager for a few years because I was capable and I was doing things on my own. But as I began to form my own brokerage company, I realized what a collapse there had been in the training and preparation of new salespeople. And that's really what's led me to doing what I'm doing today. And I guess the reason that I call that the most significant change is because it was really unique to what happened in our industry. We've seen economic cycles come and go. We've seen technology change the world. But in terms of the way the business is conducted, I really think that it occurred about 30 years ago.